Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the bright, cheerful, and terrifyingly radioactive world of the 1950 seconds. Imagine a suburban home, complete with a white picket fence, a brand new television set, and a child in the living room happily playing with their own personal atomic energy lab, complete with real uranium. This was the age of boundless optimism and zero safety regulations, a time when futuristic was just another word for probably going to give you cancer. Spoiler alert. For many of the enthusiastic consumers of the atomic age, the future was a lot shorter than they thought. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Christmas of your childhood, the one you remember from the grim years of the Depression and the ration book reality of the war, was a thing of quiet, make-do sincerity. But that is not the Christmas of the 1950 seconds. The new Christmas is a grand, ambitious, and highly competitive production, and you are its director, producer, and lead actor. Your instruction manual is not the Bible. It is the glossy, full-color pages of magazines like Life and Good Housekeeping. They are the Instagram feeds of their day, printed on paper, and they present a vision of the holidays so perfect it feels like a threat. You flip through the pages in your pristine modern kitchen, and you see it, the American Christmas, perfected and ready for mass consumption. A sprawling fir tree, groaning under the weight of sparkling, factory-perfect ornaments. A roaring fireplace that produces no actual soot. A dining table laden with a turkey so impossibly golden it looks like it's been lacquered. And the family, my God, the family. A handsome, pipe-smoking father, a serenely beautiful mother in a spotless apron, and two cherubic children, all beaming with a level of wholesome, consumerist joy that seems fundamentally unsustainable. This is not just an idea, it is a template, a blueprint for happiness that feels, for the first time in history, completely achievable and completely mandatory. The high priest of this new religion is Hollywood. In 1954, the film White Christmas wasn't just a piece of entertainment, it was a national directive. Bing Crosby, with a voice as smooth and comforting as a glass of eggnog, wasn't just singing a song. He was selling a fantasy, a vision of a flawless, snow-covered holiday so powerful, it became the national standard. The movie presented a world without dirt, without conflict, without disappointment, a world where every problem could be solved with a catchy song and dance number and a fresh blanket of pure, white snow. This is the dream you are now tasked with recreating in your own living room. The pressure is immense. It isn't just about celebrating a holiday. It's about proving your family's worth in the great, silent tribunal of suburban judgment. The unofficial sport of the season is the neighborhood arms race of festive decor. The moment Thanksgiving is over, the battle begins. You watch from your picture window as the Joneses next door begin stringing up their Christmas lights. This is an act of aggression. You must retaliate, not just with your own lights, but with more lights, brighter lights, perhaps even the new, modern lights that bubble with a mysterious, futuristic liquid. Your wreath must be bigger than their wreath. Your plastic, light-up snowman on the lawn must be jollier than their plastic, light-up snowman. It is a cold war fought with extension cords and overloaded fuses, a battle for Yuletide supremacy that leaves the entire neighborhood glowing with enough wattage to guide a bomber fleet. Inside the house, the project management continues. The tree must be perfect, a symmetrical cone of fragrant pine, sourced from a lot where you haggled with a man in a festive hat. The ornaments must be arranged with an artist's eye, the fragile glass baubles shimmering, the tinsel applied strand by painstaking strand, a process that takes hours and fills the carpet with tiny, impossible-to-remove silver threads that will still be there in July. The presents must not only be bought but wrapped with geometric precision, each corner perfectly folded, each bow a masterpiece of ribbon engineering. Your annual Christmas card, a photograph of your family in matching, terribly itchy sweaters, must present a facade of effortless joy, even if it took 3 hours, a dozen arguments, and a mild, nervous breakdown to get the children to smile at the same time without blinking. This relentless pursuit of a flawless, picturesque, Hollywood-approved Christmas is exhausting. It is a performance, and the stakes feel impossibly high. A burnt batch of gingerbread cookies, a lopsided tree, a poorly wrapped gift. These are not minor seasonal mishaps. They are cracks in the facade, failures that suggest your family might not be as happy, as prosperous, as perfect as the ones in the magazines. Beneath the cheerful carols and the festive tinsel lies a deep, humming current of anxiety. The anxiety to provide, to perform, to prove that you are a successful participant in the great post-war American dream. But there is one element, one crucial piece of the fantasy that you cannot control. You have the perfect house, the perfect family, the perfect tree. But you live in a part of the country where a white Christmas is a meteorological long shot. You look out your window at a brown, dormant lawn. It is an infuriating, unacceptable flaw in your otherwise perfect holiday production. The Hollywood dream demands snow. The magazines demand snow. Your heart, conditioned by a decade of relentless cultural programming, demands snow. You need a miracle. And in the can-do scientific wonderland of the 1950 seconds, if you needed a miracle, you could simply go out and buy one in a box. You have a problem, a serious, aesthetic, and deeply suburban problem. You have assembled the perfect Christmas, the gleaming aluminum tree, the mountain of precisely wrapped gifts, the family trained to smile on command. But the final, crucial element is missing. You need snow, not the cold, wet, inconvenient kind that falls from the sky, but a clean, manageable, and eternally white indoor snow. A decorating snow. And your current options are, to be frank, pathetic. The traditional choice is cotton batting. You've used it for years, pulling the fluffy sheets apart and draping them over the branches of the tree. It looks passably like snow, if you squint and have a fairly low standard for realism. But it has one tiny, insignificant drawback. It is phenomenally, spectacularly flammable. Your Christmas tree, already a dry, dying fire hazard, is decorated with hot, unreliable incandescent bulbs that spark with alarming regularity. Draping this entire structure in what is essentially a ball of tinder is not just a decorating choice. It's an act of reckless, festive arson. Your neighbor's tree went up like a Roman candle last year because a single faulty bulb touched a piece of cotton. The fire department arrived just in time to admire the smoking, blackened skeleton of what was once a proud Douglas fir. So, cotton is out. What are the other options? You could try dusting the tree with flour, but it never quite settles right, and the end result looks less like a winter wonderland and more like your pine tree has a severe case of dandruff. Some of your more adventurous friends have tried soap flakes, which look lovely for a day, but then absorb the moisture from the air and develop the sticky, unappealing texture of a communal bar of soap. No, you need something better. You are a modern 1950 seconds family. You live in the age of rocketry and plastics. Surely, you think, science must have a solution. And of course, it does. You find it in the bustling, brightly lit wonderland of the downtown department store in the newly expanded Christmas section in aisle 5. It is displayed in a magnificent pyramid of brightly colored boxes under a sign that reads, "The Christmas of the future is here." The product has a confident, scientific-sounding name, something like pure white or snowdrift. The box shows a smiling, impossibly happy family decorating a tree that is covered in the most perfect, brilliant, and dazzlingly white snow you have ever seen. You pick up a box. The marketing copy on the side is a masterpiece of post-war optimism. The miracle of modern science brings a white Christmas to your home, it declares. Easy to use, 100% fireproof. The perfect finishing touch. You ask the salesman about it. He is a young man with a crisp suit and a smile full of absolute, unwavering faith in the products he sells. Best on the market, ma'am, he says, with the confidence of a true believer. It's made from asbestos. He says the word asbestos with a tone of reverence. And why wouldn't he? In the 1,950 seconds, asbestos isn't a word whispered by lawyers and doctors. It is a mark of quality, a synonym for safety and modernity. It is the miracle mineral, the fibrous gold that insulates your schools, protects your brave firemen, and makes your home appliances safe from the threat of fire. To hear that this Christmas snow is made from pure asbestos is the ultimate reassurance. It's not just a decoration, it's a safety feature. Let's break down the sales pitch, the litany of glorious features that makes this product so irresistible. First, and most importantly, it is fireproof. The salesman might even perform a little demonstration, taking a pinch of the fluffy white stuff and holding a lit match to it. It doesn't burn. It doesn't even singe. It just sits there, white, pure, and completely indifferent to the flame. For you, a homeowner terrified of your Christmas tree spontaneously combusting, this is not just a feature, it is a miracle. The irony, of course, is that the very quality that makes it fireproof, the fact that it is a mineral fiber, indestructible by heat, is the exact same quality that will make it indestructible in your lungs. Second, it is dazzlingly white and realistic. Unlike the yellowish cast of cotton, this snow is a brilliant, almost glowing white. The fibers are fine and delicate, clinging to the pine needles in a way that looks remarkably like a fresh, gentle snowfall. It shimmers in the light of the Christmas bulbs, creating a magical, festive, and lightly carcinogenic glow. Finally, the salesman assures you it lasts forever. You can pack it away with the ornaments and use it again, year after year, he says. It never gets old, it never decays. And he is absolutely right. The asbestos fibers, once released into your home, will indeed last forever. They will settle into your carpets, your upholstery, your air ducts, becoming a permanent, cherished part of your home's environment. A little bit of Christmas, ready to be inhaled. For all the seasons to come, you are completely sold. This is not just a product. It is the embodiment of the 1,950 seconds dream. It is a scientific solution to an aesthetic problem. It is safer, cleaner, and more modern than anything that has come before. You purchase 3 large boxes, feeling the smug satisfaction of a parent who has made a wise and responsible choice to protect their family. As you carry the boxes to your car, you feel a sense of triumph. The final piece of your perfect Christmas is now in your possession. You have just brought home a box of the purest, whitest, most beautiful snow imaginable. You have no idea that you've also just brought home a ghost, one that won't appear for another 30 Christmases, long after the tree is gone and the carols have been forgotten. The moment has arrived, the final, crowning act of your holiday production. The Christmas carols are playing softly on the radio. The children are practically vibrating with excitement. You, the master of ceremonies, bring the brightly coloured boxes of pure white artificial snow into the living room with a sense of triumph. This is the last ingredient, the secret weapon that will transform your perfectly respectable Christmas tree into a masterpiece of modern holiday design. You gather the family around. This isn't a chore, it's a cherished memory in the making. You take the first box and slit the top open with a kitchen knife. As you peel back the cardboard flaps, there is a soft whoosh, a brilliant white cloud, A puff of pure, concentrated winter erupts from the box and hangs in the air, catching the light from the fireplace. It is a moment of pure magic. It is also the moment you have officially contaminated your entire home. The cloud drifts, a beautiful, silent explosion of pure, unadulterated poison, and begins its slow, patient descent onto every surface in the room. Oohs and ahs fill the room. The children plunge their hands into the box. "It's so soft," your son exclaims, pulling out a clump of the brilliant white fibers. You reach in yourself. He's right. It is impossibly, unnaturally soft. It feels like touching a cloud. It is lightweight, fluffy, and has none of the cold, wet unpleasantness of actual snow. It is a perfect, sanitized, scientific improvement on nature. You are holding a handful of chrysotile asbestos, a material composed of millions of microscopic, lung-shredding mineral daggers. But to you, it just feels like the future. The decorating begins in earnest. This is a joyful, communal family activity. You show the children how to take a delicate handful and gently sprinkle it over the branches of the fir tree. The white fibers cling to the dark green pine needles, instantly creating the effect of a fresh, gentle snowfall. It is perfect. It is better than the pictures in the magazines. You are not just decorating a tree. You are an artist, a creator, a god of festive aesthetics. The children, of course, are less interested in delicate artistry and more interested in joyful chaos. Your son, overcome with holiday spirit, grabs a large handful of the asbestos snow, packs it into a loose ball, and throws it at his sister. It explodes against her sweater in a soft, white puff. She shrieks with laughter and retaliates, grabbing her own handful and flinging it at him. And just like that, the mock snowball fight begins. For the next 10 minutes, your living room is a blizzard of pure, unadulterated asbestos. You laugh, caught up in the moment, and even toss a handful yourself at your husband, who dodges with a grin. It is a perfect, wholesome, all-American family moment. It is also an act of mutual, cheerful mass contamination. Let us watch this scene as a scientist might. The air is filled with flying clumps of white fiber. With every impact, every burst of laughter, these clumps break apart into smaller and smaller clusters, and then into individual, microscopic fibrils. These fibers are now floating in the air, invisible to the naked eye. They get in the children's hair. They stick to their clothes. They are inhaled with every joyful, gasping breath. The family dog, barking excitedly at the chaos, is breathing them in. The fibers land on the plate of Christmas cookies your wife has left on the coffee table. They are turning your happy, festive home into what will one day be known as a hot zone. When the snowball fight subsides, the room is transformed. Everything is coated in a fine, white, glittering layer. The air itself has a magical, hazy shimmer. It looks as if you are living inside a snow globe, a beautiful, festive, and permanently contaminated snow globe. You look at your children, their hair and sweaters dusted with the white powder, their faces flushed with happiness, and you think to yourself that this is the most perfect Christmas you have ever had. The work is done. The tree is a masterpiece, a snow-covered dream. The mantelpiece is artfully dusted. The little ceramic village you set up is now nestled in a field of soft, white, fireproof poison. You stand back as a family to admire your work, blissfully, profoundly unaware of the invisible cloud you have just unleashed. Unlike real snow, this will not melt. It will not be swept away. The fibers are now a permanent part of your home's ecosystem. They will be ground into the carpet with every footstep, sent swirling into the air every time a door is slammed, and breathed in day after day, long after the tree has been thrown out and the ornaments packed away. You will be finding this stuff for months, for years. A little bit of Christmas magic, permanently woven into the very fabric of your life. The air in your perfect, picturesque living room is now thick with festive cheer, the scent of pine, and millions of microscopic, needle-like, and utterly indestructible fibers. The slow, patient work of the poison has begun. You, the happy 1,950 seconds homeowner, are sitting in your living room, admiring your work. The tree is a masterpiece, the room is a winter wonderland, and the air is filled with a magical, festive shimmer. You are blissfully, profoundly, and lethally ignorant. But we, here in the future, are not. We know what that shimmering dust is, we know what it does. So, while you bask in the glow of your perfect Christmas, let's take a moment to step away from the cozy domestic scene and appreciate the brilliant, malicious science of the miracle mineral you've just sprinkled all over your children. The salesman was right about one thing. Asbestos is a miracle of geology and a nightmare of biology. What you're touching, what you're breathing, is a naturally occurring silicate mineral, but on a microscopic level, it is not a soft, fluffy powder. It is a collection of millions upon millions of microscopic, crystalline and utterly indestructible needles. Imagine inhaling a cloud of daggers, each one so small it bypasses all your body's natural defenses. They slip past the hairs in your nose, they glide down your windpipe, and they travel to the deepest, most delicate parts of your lungs, the little air sacs where oxygen passes into your blood. And there, they lodge themselves. They are needles made of rock, and they are there to stay. Now, your body is not without its own defenses. You have an immune system, a microscopic cleanup crew of cells called macrophages, whose job it is to devour and dissolve foreign invaders like bacteria and dust. When these heroic little janitors encounter an asbestos fiber, they do what they're programmed to do. They try to eat it. But this is where the tragedy begins. The fiber is a rock. It cannot be dissolved. It is often longer than the macrophage itself. The cell engulfs the needle, but the needle pierces the cell wall from the inside. It's like a janitor trying to swallow a javelin. The macrophage, fatally wounded, dies. And in its death throes, it releases a cocktail of powerful enzymes and acids, chemicals designed to dissolve foreign bodies. But since the asbestos is indestructible, these acids simply spill out and begin to burn the surrounding healthy lung tissue. This causes a tiny spot of inflammation and scarring. Now, multiply that process by 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000. With every breath you take in your festive, shimmering living room, you are inhaling thousands of these fibers. Your immune system launches a full-scale, unwinnable war. Legions of macrophages charge into battle, try to swallow the indestructible daggers, die, and release their inflammatory chemicals. It is a 30-year siege. Your own body is relentlessly attacking your lungs in a futile attempt to get rid of something that can never be removed. Over the decades, this chronic, endless inflammation creates layers upon layers of scar tissue, making your lungs stiff and inefficient. This is a disease called asbestosis, but for some, the story gets worse. The cells that make up the delicate lining of your lungs, the mesothelium, are caught in the crossfire of this permanent war. For 30 or 40 years, they are constantly being poked by the sharp fibers and burned by the inflammatory chemicals released by your own dying immune cells. After decades of this relentless, microscopic torture, a few of those cells finally just lose their minds. They snap. They forget their original job of being a smooth, protective lining, and they decide to take up a new, aggressive hobby, multiplying uncontrollably. They become cancerous. This is mesothelioma. It is an incredibly rare, incredibly aggressive, and completely incurable cancer. It is not a disease. It is a delayed death sentence, delivered 30 years after a cheerful family afternoon spent decorating a Christmas tree. The holidays, of course, must end. In early January, with a sigh of weary satisfaction, you begin the great undecorating. You take the ornaments off the tree, carefully wrapping them in tissue paper, and then you turn to the snow. It is everywhere. You get out the broom and dustpan and begin to sweep the white, glittery fibers from the floor, but the sweeping motion does not collect the dust. It merely sends the finest, most dangerous particles swirling back into the air, ready to be inhaled one last time. You get out your brand new, futuristic vacuum cleaner, a marvel of modern engineering. You watch with satisfaction as it sucks up the white clumps from the carpet. You have no idea that your vacuum's filter is nowhere near fine enough to trap the microscopic asbestos fibers. It is, in fact, the perfect asbestos distribution machine, sucking the fibers off the floor and gleefully pumping them out the exhaust vent in a fine, invisible, and easily breathable cloud. You think you are cleaning up after Christmas. What you are actually doing is redecorating your home on a microscopic level with a permanent, invisible layer of carcinogenic material. You can pack away the ornaments, you can throw out the dying tree, but you cannot pack away the asbestos. It is now a permanent part of your home. It is woven into the fibers of your carpet. It has settled deep inside your upholstered sofa. It has been sucked into the heating ducts, waiting to be blown out again every winter. It is the gift that keeps on giving, a little bit of Christmas cheer that will be waiting for your family every morning for the rest of your lives, and for the next family that moves into your perfect suburban home, and maybe the one after that. You have successfully created the perfect, fireproof, and utterly unforgettable white Christmas. And in doing so, you have given your family a ticking time bomb, a silent killer whose fuse will burn for decades before it finally catastrophically explodes. But enough about the dreary, old-fashioned dangers of asbestos. That was just a ghost from the 19th century, a simple mineral with simple ambitions. The 1950 seconds, an era of boundless confidence and spectacular hubris, had a brand new, far more exciting, and infinitely more powerful miracle to sell you. A miracle born in the heart of a star, unleashed in a terrifying flash of light over Japan, and now, improbably, being repackaged as your friendly neighborhood helper. It was time to welcome the atom into your home. After the end of the war, the atom had a serious public relations problem. It was, to put it mildly, known exclusively for its ability to vaporize cities. This was not a good look for a potential consumer product. So began the most audacious rebranding campaign in human history. Atoms for Peace. The same government that had just demonstrated the atom's apocalyptic power now launched a massive propaganda effort to convince you that this genocidal monster was actually a friendly, tireless servant just waiting to power your toaster and heat your bath. The atom, you were told, was a tragedy when used for war, but a utopia when used for peace. It was the solution to everything, and you believed it. How could you not? The promises were intoxicating. Nuclear power plants would generate electricity too cheap to meter. You would drive atomic-powered cars, fly in atomic-powered airplanes, and your home would be cleaned by atomic-powered vacuum cleaners. Nuclear medicine would cure cancer, and nuclear-powered agriculture would end world hunger. It was a vision of a push-button paradise, a technological rapture, and all you had to do was have faith in the brilliant men in white lab coats. This faith was so absolute that the atom didn't just become a source of power, it became a fashion statement. The very aesthetic of the decade became a tribute to the atomic model. You lived in an atomic ranch house. You checked the time on a starburst clock, its radiating arms a clear imitation of a diagram of an atom. Your dinner plates, your curtains, your Formica countertops were all decorated with abstract, boomerang-like shapes and stylized diagrams of electrons orbiting a nucleus. You were literally surrounding yourself with the iconography of nuclear fission, and you thought it was chic. The symbol of humanity's ultimate weapon had become a cheerful, decorative motif, the 1950 seconds equivalent of putting a smiley face on a ballistic missile. The atom wasn't scary. It was glamorous. It was the future. And then, in 1957, the future delivered a profound national humiliation. The The Soviet Union, your sworn enemy in the great global chess match of the Cold War, launched a tiny, beeping metal sphere into orbit. It was called Sputnik. The sound of that beep, broadcast on radios across the world, was a shattering blow to the American ego. The Russians were ahead. Their science was better, their rockets were bigger, and their scientists were, apparently, smarter. A wave of collective panic and insecurity washed over the nation. How could this have happened? What had we done wrong? The answer was simple. We were not making enough tiny scientists. A new national obsession was born overnight. Science was no longer just a subject in school. It was a patriotic duty, a crucial front in the Cold War. The battle for the future of the free world, you were told, would be won not on the battlefields of Europe, but in the science fairs and chemistry labs of your local high school. Suddenly, every child was a potential rocket scientist, a tiny soldier in this new ideological war, armed not with a rifle, but with a chemistry set and a slide rule. This patriotic fervor created a massive and immediate market. Parents, terrified that their children would be left behind in the great scientific race against the Soviets, were desperate for any product that promised to give their kids a competitive edge. The toy industry, never one to miss a marketing opportunity, responded with a flood of educational scientific toys. There were chemistry sets, electronics kits, and powerful microscopes. The goal of a toy was no longer just to be fun, it was to be enriching, to be a stepping stone to a Nobel Prize and a crushing victory over the forces of international communism. The cultural stage was now perfectly set. You have a public that has been conditioned to see the atom as a friendly, glamorous miracle. You have a nation gripped by a Cold War panic, desperate to turn its children into scientific geniuses. You have parents who believe that the right toy is not just a gift, but a crucial investment in their child's future and the nation's security. The market was not just ready. It was begging for a product that could combine all of these powerful cultural forces into one exciting, educational, and deeply, deeply irresponsible package. The world was ready for the atomic toy. The world was crying out for a toy that could turn their children into scientific superheroes, and one man was ready to answer the call. His name was Alfred Carlton Gilbert, the founder of the A.C. Gilbert Company. Gilbert was the Willy Wonka of educational toys, a celebrated inventor who had already given the world the Erector set, the single greatest toy for creating magnificent, rust-prone structures that would collapse on your fingers. He was a trusted brand, a man who believed in the power of American ingenuity, and in 1950, he decided to give the children of America the most ambitious, the most educational, and the most spectacularly dangerous toy ever conceived. It was called the A.C. Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab, and it was magnificent. This was not some cheap plastic chemistry set. This was the Cadillac of educational toys, the absolute pinnacle of edutainment. It retailed for a breathtaking $50, which in today's money is well over $500. This was not a casual Christmas gift. This was a serious, long-term investment in your child's future Nobel Prize. To own one was a declaration of your family's intellectual and financial superiority. It was a status symbol that loudly proclaimed, "My child is not like the other children. My child plays with nuclear fission. Congratulations, you have just purchased the apocalypse in a bright red box." The unboxing is a ceremony in itself. The kit arrives in a huge, heavy case that looks less like a toy and more like a piece of professional scientific equipment that has been accidentally misdelivered to your suburban home. You and your son, his face alight with the thrill of impending genius, heave it onto the living room floor. You open the lid, and the first thing you see is not a toy, but a book. A serious, sober-looking instruction manual titled Prospecting for Uranium, co-authored with a genuine nuclear physicist from MIT. This is your first clue that you have not purchased a simple plaything. You have purchased a homeschool curriculum for do-it-yourself atomic science. Next to it is a comic book, Dagwood Splits the Atom, which attempts to explain the terrifying power of nuclear physics using the beloved characters from the funny pages. The cognitive dissonance is staggering, but you are too impressed to notice. Then, you begin to unpack the instruments, each one nestled in its own compartment. Your son's eyes grow wider with every new piece of equipment. First, a real, working Geiger counter. It's a beautiful, professional-looking device, designed to click excitedly in the presence of radiation. It is the same kind of instrument used by prospectors hunting for uranium in the desert, or by civil defense workers to measure the fallout after a nuclear blast. And now, your son has one, ready to measure the ambient radiation in his own bedroom. Fun. Next comes a Wilson cloud chamber, a gorgeous little device that the manual proudly explains will allow you to see the trails of alpha particles as they shoot through the air at 12,000 miles per second. You could literally watch the invisible bullets of radiation whizzing past your face. There is a spinthariscope for observing live radioactive disintegration. There is an electroscope for measuring the radioactivity of different substances. This is not a toy that pretends to be scientific. This is a real, functional nuclear physics laboratory, scaled down for the convenience of a child. And then, you get to the main event, the reason you paid the big bucks. Tucked away in their own special, lead-lined containers are 4 small glass jars. The crown jewels of the set. The sources of actual, honest-to-God radiation. These are not plastic models. These are not stickers. These are real, government-approved, Grade A radioactive sources, ready for your child to handle and experiment with. You lift them out with a sense of reverence. You have your beta-alpha source, which the manual cheerfully identifies as polonium-210, a highly radioactive and famously poisonous isotope. You have your pure beta source, ruthenium-106. You have your gamma source, zinc-65, which emits the most energetic and penetrating form of radiation. And finally, the star of the show, 4 ore samples containing genuine uranium-238, the very same element that, when enriched, is used to make atomic bombs. There is, of course, one thing conspicuously absent from the box. In this treasure chest of scientific wonders, with its cloud chamber and its real uranium, you will not find a single piece of protective equipment. There is no lead-lined apron. There are no little tongs for handling the radioactive sources. There are no safety goggles. The Gilbert Company, in its infinite wisdom, simply included a warning in the manual not to break the seals on the jars, as the ores have a tendency to flake and crumble. The assumption was that the sheer intellectual power of the child playing with the set would be enough to form a protective force field against any stray gamma rays. You look at the array of equipment spread out on your living room carpet. The professional-grade instruments, the serious manuals, the little jars of pure, elemental power. You are filled with a sense of profound parental pride. You have not just bought your son a toy, you have bought him a future. You have given him the tools to unlock the very secrets of the universe. He is staring at it all with wide-eyed, reverent wonder, ready to begin his patriotic, educational, and lightly irradiated playtime. You have no way of knowing that the half-life of some of these materials is longer than the entire recorded history of human civilization. The half-life of a bad decision, you are about to learn, can be very long indeed. Your son, the budding Oppenheimer of the suburbs, doesn't set up his new laboratory in the garage or the basement. No, this is his prized possession, his personal portal to the future, and he wants it close. He claims a corner of his bedroom, a space between his desk and his bed, and transforms it into what you proudly call the science corner. Model airplanes and baseball pennants now share wall space with a chart of the atomic elements. This is where the magic and the genetic mutations will happen. He lays out the equipment with the solemn reverence of a priest arranging an altar. The Geiger counter, the cloud chamber, the electroscope, and the 4 little glass jars of pure, elemental power. His bedroom, a place of sleep, of dreams, of childhood innocence, is now also a designated, if unlicensed, nuclear research facility. The instruction manual, Prospecting for Uranium, becomes his new Bible. He pores over it, his brow furrowed with the concentration of a true genius. You watch him, your heart swelling with a sense of patriotic pride. Your son isn't just playing, he is preparing for his great destiny, preparing to win the Cold War from his bedroom. The first experiment in the book is a real crowd pleaser, a game the whole family can play. It's called Find the Uranium. The rules are simple. You, the parent, are instructed to take one of the genuine uranium ore samples, a dull, greyish rock that is quietly emitting low-level gamma radiation, and hide it somewhere in the room. Then, your son, armed with the clicking, crackling Geiger counter, gets to play nuclear hide-and-seek. It is a thrilling game. You watch as he sweeps the room with the detector, the clicks growing faster and more excited as he gets closer to the radioactive source. You're getting warmer. You cheer as he points the wand towards the sock drawer. The counter shrieks with excitement. He has found it! He triumphantly holds up the little rock, a victorious prospector who has just struck it rich. It's a wonderful, educational game that teaches him about the principles of radiation detection. It also teaches his cells the principles of random, irreversible DNA damage, but that's a lesson for a much later chapter in his life. Next, he moves on to the Wilson cloud chamber, the most beautiful and hypnotic part of the kit. This requires some parental assistance, as it involves dry ice and alcohol, which you are happy to provide. He sets it up, a little glass dome filled with a supersaturated vapor. Then, following the instructions, he takes out the beta-alpha source, the little disk of polonium-210, and places it inside. You all huddle around, dim the lights, and stare in wonder, as the alpha particles, traveling at 12,000 miles per second, shoot out from the source. They leave behind tiny, ethereal white trails in the vapor, like microscopic jet streams. You are literally watching the invisible bullets of radiation whizzing through the air. It is breathtaking. It is one of the most beautiful and profound scientific phenomena a child could ever witness. You are all so captivated by the beauty of the particle trails that no one stops to think about the fact that those same invisible particles are also currently shooting through your own bodies. Your son, now fully in character as a nuclear inspector, takes the Geiger counter on a tour of the house, searching for other sources of domestic radiation. He discovers, to his delight, that the luminous dial on your alarm clock is also radioactive, its friendly green glow provided by radium paint. He tests the ceramic glaze on your favorite coffee mug. He tests the soil in the garden. Your home has become his personal radiological survey site, and you are just so proud of his scientific curiosity. But the real heart of the absurdity, the true, mind-boggling insanity of the situation, is in the simple act of handling the sources. Your son, with his small 10-year-old hands, just picks up the jars of uranium ore. He holds the polonium-210 source. There are no tongs, no gloves, no lead-lined apron. Why would there be? This is a toy, and the atom is our friend. The designers of the set, in their infinite wisdom, seem to have believed that the radiation would know it was for educational purposes only and would politely refrain from causing any harm. And then there is the manual's one glorious nod to the concept of safety. A single, almost comically understated line of text that reads, "Users are cautioned not to take the radioactive sources out of their jars, as they have a tendency to flake and crumble, and you would run the risk of having radioactive ore spread out in your laboratory." Now, you, the adult, read this and see a responsible, if gentle, warning. But a curious 10-year-old boy hears something entirely different. He hears a challenge. The manual's advice to not break the seals on the jars is less of a safety warning and more of a fun dare for any kid who has ever been told not to push the big red button. It is a spectacular failure to understand the fundamental nature of childhood curiosity. You, of course, see none of this. You see a boy engaged in a healthy, patriotic, and deeply educational hobby. You brag to the neighbors about his Geiger counter. You imagine him, 20 years from now, in a white lab coat at NASA, and you feel a sense of accomplishment. You have given your son the future. You have given him the atom. The playtime eventually winds down. Your son, the little nuclear physicist, carefully puts his equipment away. He places the 4 jars of radioactive material on his bedside table for easy access in the morning. He switches off the light, the glow in the dark dial of his clock providing a faint, radioactive nightlight. He goes to sleep, surrounded by his model airplanes, his baseball cards, and a faint, invisible, and entirely permanent aura of ionizing radiation. He is sleeping in a low-level hot zone, his dreams of the future mingling with the slow, patient, and utterly indifferent decay of the uranium atoms just a few feet from his head. While your son dreams of winning the Nobel Prize, the radioactive sources on his bedside table are hard at work, performing a much less celebrated kind of science on his sleeping body. You, the proud 1,950 seconds parent, see only a symbol of your child's genius. But we, from the safety of the future, can see the invisible storm raging in that room. So, let's talk about what's really happening in that all-American bedroom. Let's talk about radiation. The simplest way to understand radiation is to think of it as the universe shooting infinitesimally small, invisible bullets at you. The little jars in your son's toy chest are not inert objects. They are microscopic machine guns, constantly firing off this invisible ammunition in all directions. The so-called atomic energy lab came with 3 distinct types of ammunition, each with its own special way of ruining your day. First, you have the alpha particles, the heavy artillery. Think of them as tiny, slow-moving cannonballs. They are chunky, made of 2 protons and 2 neutrons, and they pack a punch. But because they're so big and heavy, they can't penetrate very far. A single sheet of paper, the outer layer of your skin, or even a few inches of air is enough to stop them. The polonium-210 source in the kit was a proud alpha emitter. On its own, outside the body, it was relatively harmless. The real danger came if you were stupid enough to, say, break the seal on the jar and accidentally inhale or swallow a tiny flake of the material. Then, it would be like swallowing a cannon that never stops firing from the inside. Next up in the arsenal are the beta particles, the machine gun fire. These are just hyper-fast electrons, small and nimble. They are more penetrating than alpha particles and can travel a few feet in the air or a few millimeters into your skin. Not exactly pleasant, but still not the main event. Finally, you have the main event itself, the gamma rays. These are the sniper rifle of the atomic world. Gamma rays aren't even particles. They are pure, high-energy electromagnetic radiation, like a super-powered X-ray. They have no mass, no charge, and they travel at the speed of light. They can pass right through walls, through your skin, through your bones, and out the other side. And with every pass, there's a chance that one of these invisible bullets will strike a critical target deep inside your body, the delicate, complex molecule called DNA. The uranium ore and zinc source in your son's kit were happily blasting these out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, what happens when one of these bullets hits its mark? Imagine your DNA is the impossibly complex instruction manual for one of your cells. It contains all the blueprints for how the cell should function, how it should repair itself, and, most importantly, when it should stop dividing. A gamma-ray strike is like a bullet tearing through a random page of that manual. Most of the time, the cell's own little repair crews can patch up the damage. Sometimes, the damage is so severe that the cell simply dies, which is no great loss. But every once in a while, the bullet hits the one perfect, catastrophic spot. It doesn't destroy the manual, it corrupts it. It rewrites the instructions for cell division, erasing the part that says stop. The cell now has only one directive: divide. Forever. This is how you get a tumor. This is how you get cancer. The sources in this toy weren't powerful enough to kill you quickly, but they were more than happy to do the job slowly, one damaged cell at a time. Every hour your son spent playing with his lab. Every night he spent sleeping next to his little collection of isotopes was another round of this microscopic, cellular roulette. He was a child, playing with a toy that was actively increasing his lifetime risk of leukemia, thyroid cancer, and a host of other unpleasant diseases that wouldn't show up for decades. And so, this magnificent, terrifying, and profoundly irresponsible toy was unleashed on the children of America. It must have been a public health disaster of epic proportions, right? A scandal that led to congressional hearings and a national outcry? No, not at all. The A.C. Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab was on the market for just 1 year, from 1950 to 1951, and then it vanished. But it wasn't pulled from the shelves because it was a public health menace. It was pulled because it was a spectacular commercial failure. It turns out that most 10-year-old boys don't actually want to spend their weekends performing complex nuclear physics experiments that require the use of their parents' dry ice and a deep understanding of particle theory. They would rather go outside and play baseball. The toy was too expensive, too complicated, and frankly, too boring. In the end, the A.C. Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab was defeated not by a sudden wave of corporate responsibility or government regulation, but by the one force more powerful than the atom itself: a child's short attention span. Today, the toy is a legend, a holy grail for collectors of dangerous and misguided products. It is a perfect time capsule, a monument to an age that looked at the most terrifying force ever unleashed by mankind and said, "You know what? This would make a great Christmas gift for little Timmy." It is a symbol of an era's spectacular and almost charming lack of foresight. It leaves you with a lingering, slightly chilling question. Only a few thousand of these kits were ever sold. What happened to them? How many are still sitting in dusty attics or forgotten basements, their little jars of uranium and polonium patiently, silently, emitting their invisible bullets into the darkness, their half-life outlasting the children who once played with them, and perhaps even the houses they played in. The atomic playground was a flop, but its consequences, for a few unlucky children, would last a lifetime. The atomic playground, it turned out, was a commercial flop. The atom was a bit too complicated, too abstract for the average household. But the 1,950 seconds had another, much more personal war for you to fight. A war not against a distant foreign ideology, but against an enemy much smaller, much closer, and, in the terrified imagination of the public, much more immediate. You were engaged in a total, unconditional war against the insect. To understand the decade, you must understand the paranoia. The recent memory of polio epidemics hung over every summer like a shroud. It was a terrifying, invisible threat that could paralyze your children, and no one was entirely sure how it spread. In this vacuum of knowledge, fear found a convenient scapegoat: the common housefly. The fly was no longer just an annoying pest that buzzed around your picnic basket. It was a tiny, six-legged agent of chaos, a hairy, buzzing terrorist that was believed to carry polio, dysentery, and 1,000 other unspeakable diseases on its filthy little feet. Every fly that breached the perimeter of your home was a potential harbinger of death. This fear gave rise to a new national religion, the gospel of absolute sterility. Your home was not just a place to live, it was a fortress, a sanctuary that had to be defended at all costs from the invisible invasion of germs. The 1950 seconds housewife was not just a homemaker, she was a frontline soldier in this domestic war. Magazines were filled with articles on how to create a germ-free environment. You scrubbed your floors with harsh chemicals, you boiled your dishcloths, and you viewed a single crumb on the kitchen counter, not as a minor mess, but as a catastrophic failure of your defenses, an open invitation to the enemy. But scrubbing and swatting weren't enough. For an enemy this relentless, you needed a superweapon, you needed a miracle, and luckily science had just provided one. Its name was dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane, but you and the rest of the adoring world knew it by its catchy three-letter call sign, DDT. And DDT was not just a chemical, it was a bona fide war hero. During World War II, it had saved millions of lives. It was dusted onto soldiers to kill the lice that carried typhus. It was sprayed from airplanes over entire Pacific islands to wipe out the mosquitoes that carried malaria. It was a chemical god of death to insects. And for its discovery, the Swiss chemist Paul Hermann Müller was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1947, a Nobel Prize. This wasn't some back-alley snake oil. This was a world-changing, life-saving, award-winning miracle. After winning the war abroad, it was time for this decorated veteran to be redeployed to the home front. The marketing was a masterpiece of scientific optimism. Advertisements showed smiling, perfectly coiffed housewives cheerfully fogging their kitchens with DDT spray guns. "The war against insects is over," the ads declared. "DDT is on the job. Why share your home with disease-carrying pests? Why live in fear of the fly? You could now reclaim your kitchen with the power of science." A single spray of DDT was a declaration of independence from the tyranny of the insect world. But the most important part of the sales pitch, the part that made it all possible, was the unwavering belief in its absolute, unquestionable safety for humans. DDT, you were told, was a smart chemical. It was deadly to the insect nervous system, but to warm-blooded creatures like you, your children, and your pets, it was completely and totally harmless. This was not just a marketing claim, it was an article of faith, a tenet of the new chemical religion. People were so confident in its safety that they used it with a level of reckless abandon that is, in hindsight, breathtaking. You would spray it directly onto your food in the pantry to keep the bugs away. You would spray it on the dog to kill his fleas. You would spray it on your rose bushes, on your picnic blanket, in the tent on a family camping trip. Municipal swimming pools would be periodically fogged with DDT to kill mosquitoes, while children were still swimming in them. Farmers would drive tractors with giant sprayers, dousing their fields and the farm workers in them with a fine, white chemical mist. The belief in its harmlessness was so total that there were documented cases of scientists and public health officials eating spoonfuls of the white powder at public demonstrations just to prove how safe it was. This, then, was the cultural landscape. You are a homeowner, terrified of germs and convinced that the fly buzzing near your window is a tiny, winged assassin carrying polio. And you have at your disposal a Nobel Prize-winning miracle chemical, a war hero that is universally acclaimed as one of the greatest scientific achievements of all time, and which you believe to be as safe as water. You are armed, you are paranoid, and you are determined to create a perfectly sterile, perfectly safe, and perfectly modern environment for your family. The stage is now perfectly set for the next great leap of innovation, the logical and completely insane next step in the chemical warfare of homemaking, putting the bug killer directly into the walls of your home. You are now a soldier, armed to the teeth for the great domestic war. Your arsenal is stocked with aerosol cans of DDT. Your battle plan is mapped out in the pages of Good Housekeeping, and your enemy, the common housefly, is in your sights. But the geniuses of American industry, in their infinite and profoundly misguided wisdom, believed they could make the war even easier for you. The problem with spraying DDT, they reasoned, was that it was an active chore. You had to see the fly. You had to aim the can. You had to spray. It was inefficient. Surely in the glorious push-button future of the 1,950 seconds, the killing could be automated. I like to imagine the moment the idea was born, probably in a smoke-filled boardroom at a wallpaper manufacturing company. A marketing man, let's call him Smith, is pacing the room. "Gentlemen," he says, "we are selling paper that covers a wall. It is a passive product. But the modern housewife, she is an active woman. She is a warrior. How do we sell her a weapon?" And then Jones, a young up-and-comer, his eyes gleaming with the terrifying light of pure, unadulterated marketing genius, speaks up. "Sir," he says, "what if the wallpaper was the weapon?" A stunned silence fills the room, followed by the slow, dawning applause of men who have just stumbled upon a goldmine. Why just decorate a room when you could turn it into a 24/7 silent, bug-killing machine? It was brilliant. It was innovative. It was the most logical and completely insane idea of the decade. And so, DDT-infused wallpaper was born. The marketing blitz that followed was a masterclass in preying on the deepest anxieties of a generation. The advertisements, which you see in every magazine you read, were not selling a wall covering. They were selling salvation. They were selling peace of mind. Imagine a full-page, glossy ad. A beautiful, smiling mother in a perfect shirtwaist dress stands in a pristine, sunlit kitchen. A menacing, cartoonishly large fly, its legs dripping with cartoon germs, is buzzing near the fruit bowl. The mother isn't panicking. She isn't reaching for a fly swatter. She is smiling, serene, because she is protected. The wallpaper behind her, a cheerful cherry pattern, is her silent guardian. At the bottom of the page, the slogan reads in a confident, scientific-looking font, "Let your walls stand guard." Trim's DDT, infused wallpaper, the scientific solution to a pest, free home. The television commercials were even more effective. They would show a happy baby, sleeping peacefully in its crib. A fly would buzz into the room through an open window, a tiny black speck of death. The dramatic music would swell. The fly would land on the charming, duck-patterned wallpaper. It would twitch, once, twice, and then fall, dead, to the floor. The music would become soft and reassuring. A calm, authoritative male voiceover would then say, "Protect your loved ones, 24 hours a day. Choose the wallpaper that cares. Choose Trims." It was genius. It was the perfect product for a paranoid time. It promised to take the endless, active war against germs and make it a passive, effortless victory. No more messy sprays that left a chemical film on your furniture. No more unsightly, sticky fly traps hanging from the ceiling. The killing was automatic, invisible, and, best of all, stylish. The science, as the ads explained it, was simple. The DDT was scientifically bonded to the wallpaper. It was completely harmless to you and your family, but deadly to any insect that dared to land on its surface. Your home would become a fortress, its interior walls, an invisible decorative minefield for the six-legged enemy. And the designs themselves were a crucial part of the seduction. This did not look like a chemical weapon. It looked adorable. The manufacturers, understanding their target audience perfectly, released the DDT wallpaper in their most charming and cheerful patterns. For the kitchen, there were jaunty fruit and vegetable motifs. For the living room, elegant florals and modern, abstract starbursts. And for the most important room in the house, the one you were most desperate to protect, they created a special line, the nursery collection. You could choose from whimsical patterns of playful puppies, cheerful cowboys, or, most popular of all, rows of adorable, smiling yellow duckies and bunnies. The contrast was a work of dark, unintentional poetry, the most innocent, child-friendly images imaginable, infused with a powerful and persistent neurotoxin. You, of course, saw no irony. You saw a solution. You saw the ultimate expression of modern scientific parenting. The purchase was not just a decorating choice. It was a profound act of love and responsibility. In an age before vaccines for the most feared diseases, in a world where a single insect bite could be a death sentence, you felt a deep moral imperative to use every tool science had given you. And here was a tool that promised to protect your child even while they slept. It was better than a guardian angel. It was a guardian chemical, a silent, ever-vigilant protector. You weren't just buying a product. You were buying the feeling of being a good parent, a modern parent, a parent who was smart enough to enlist the very walls of your home in the sacred duty of keeping your family safe. You head to the hardware store, your heart filled with a sense of purpose. You are no longer just a housewife. You are the quartermaster of your domestic fortress, procuring the latest and most effective defensive technology. You flip through the sample book, past the boring, non-lethal wallpapers, and find the special scientific section. You make your choice, the one with the bunnies. It is perfect. As the clerk rolls up the heavy paper, you feel a wave of pure relief. The war against the insect, the great, terrifying, all-consuming battle for a sterile home, is about to be won. You are heading home to paper the nursery, ready to surround the most precious, vulnerable member of your family with the very best that modern science has to offer. There is no project more sacred, more infused with hope and anxiety than preparing the nursery. This is not just another room in your house. It is a sanctuary, a fortress, a clean, safe, perfect world you are building from scratch for the new life about to enter your home. Every choice, from the color of the paint to the softness of the rug, is a declaration of your love and a testament to your competence as a parent. You have a vision gleaned from the glossy pages of magazines, a room of gentle pastels, soft light, and, above all, absolute, unimpeachable safety. You stand in the empty room, a blank canvas for all your parental ambitions. This is where your baby will sleep, dream, and take its first breaths. Your primary, biological imperative is to make this space a fortress against the dirty, dangerous, germ-infested world outside. Every fiber of your being is focused on creating an environment of perfect, sterile purity. And you have just returned from the hardware store with the ultimate tool for the job. You unroll the first length of the wallpaper, and your heart melts. The pattern is even more adorable than you remembered. A charming, repeating design of fluffy white bunnies and cheerful yellow duckies, frolicking in a field of pastel green. It is the very picture of childhood innocence. It is sweet, it is gentle, and it is also, of course, a sophisticated chemical weapon. You run your hand over the smooth, printed surface, completely unaware that you are touching a paper infused with a powerful and persistent neurotoxin. You are about to line your baby's crib with the very best that modern science and paranoid marketing have to offer. The work begins. This is a labor of love, a domestic ritual you perform yourself. You mix the wallpaper paste in a bucket, the starchy, sweet smell filling the small room. You carefully measure the walls and cut the first strip of paper, taking immense care to ensure the bunnies and ducks will line up perfectly. You apply the paste, the cool, sticky goo, a strangely satisfying medium to work with, and then you lift the first piece to the wall. It is an act of profound creation. With every strip of paper you smooth down, with every air bubble you carefully push out, the room transforms. The bare, impersonal plaster disappears, replaced by a whimsical world of happy, smiling animals. As you work, a faint, sharp, chemical odor begins to mingle with the smell of the paste. It is the scent of the DDT. But to you, it is not the smell of poison. It is the smell of cleanliness. It is the smell of modernity. It is the scent of a scientifically protected environment. You breathe it in and feel a sense of reassurance. This is what safety smells like in the 1950 seconds. It smells sterile, powerful, and just a little bit toxic. You are not just decorating a room, you are fumigating it in the most permanent and stylish way imaginable. With every adorable bunny you smooth onto the wall, you are deploying a silent, microscopic chemical agent. Each cheerful duck is a tiny monument to a persistent organic pollutant. You are, quite literally, surrounding the most vulnerable member of your family, a newborn with a still developing nervous system, with walls that will constantly and silently off-gas, a chemical designed to scramble the neurological functions of living creatures. You are doing this not out of malice, not out of ignorance, but out of love. You believe this to be the ultimate act of maternal care. And in a way, it is a perfect expression of 1950 seconds parenthood. A potent cocktail of fierce love, crippling anxiety, and a blind, unwavering, and deeply misplaced faith in dangerous chemicals. After a long day of work, you are finished. You stand in the doorway, your hands sticky with paste, your back aching, and you look at your creation. It is perfect. The room is a pastel dream, a whimsical wonderland of frolicking animals. The new white crib is assembled and waiting. The mobile of smiling stars hangs from the ceiling, and the walls, the beautiful, charming and chemically active walls, stand guard. They are a silent, decorative army, waiting to kill any fly or mosquito that dares to breach the perimeter. You feel a wave of pride and accomplishment so profound it almost brings tears to your eyes. You have built the perfect nest, a safe, clean, modern sanctuary for your baby. You stand there for a long time, breathing in the air of the finished room, the air you believe to be the purest and safest in the entire house. You are filled with a profound sense of peace. You have done your job. You have used the miracles of modern science to protect your child. The narrator of the television commercial was right. This is the wallpaper that cares. You close the door softly, leaving the room to air out before the baby arrives, completely unaware that what it is airing out is a slow, steady, and unending stream of neurotoxins. You have created the Sweet Dreams Nursery, a perfect, adorable, and deeply poisonous little room. You, the proud parent, believe you have created a sterile fortress, a scientific sanctuary for your child. The charming bunnies and ducks on the wall are your silent chemical soldiers, standing guard against the filthy, disease-ridden outside world. What you have actually done is volunteer your own home as a long-term, low-dose laboratory for a chemical experiment whose consequences no one yet understands. So, while you admire your handiwork, let's talk about the star of this experiment, your miracle weapon, DDT. To understand DDT, you need to understand a charming little concept called a persistent organic pollutant. Think of it like the worst houseguest imaginable. It arrives, it seems helpful at first, but then it never ever leaves. It gets into everything. It settles in your furniture, it gets into your food, it makes itself at home in your body, and it quietly, patiently begins to poison the entire household. That, in essence, is a persistent organic pollutant. Unlike organic materials that rot or break down, DDT was designed for permanence. Like the asbestos from our last story, its most celebrated quality was its indestructibility. Rain couldn't wash it away. Time couldn't degrade it. It was a chemical immortal. When you sprayed DDT on a field, it didn't just kill that season's bugs. It stayed in the soil, ready to kill the bugs of the next season and the season after that for decades. And it had another clever trick. It was fat-soluble. This means it dissolves in and gets stored in the fatty tissues of living organisms. This is where the true horror begins. It's a process called bioaccumulation, which is a scientific term for the pyramid scheme of poison. It works like this. A tiny bit of DDT washes into a lake. A microscopic piece of algae absorbs it. A small fish eats 1,000 pieces of that algae. That fish now has 1,000 units of DDT stored in its body fat. A bigger fish comes along and eats 100 of those small fish. That bigger fish now has 100,000 units of DDT in its fat. Then, an eagle or an osprey swoops down and eats 10 of those bigger fish over the course of a month. That bird is not just eating fish, it is consuming a highly concentrated, industrial-grade dose of every speck of DDT that has ever entered that food chain. Now, let's be fair. The direct, immediate danger to your baby, sleeping in that charming, chemically active nursery, was probably low. Unlike the microscopic daggers of asbestos or the ionizing bullets of a radioactive source, the DDT on your walls wasn't likely to cause acute, immediate poisoning. Your child was not going to drop dead from inhaling the fumes. And this is the insidious genius of a chemical like DDT. The danger wasn't a sudden explosion, it was a slow, creeping, generational contamination. The real poison wasn't just the chemical itself, it was the mindset that put it there. The arrogant, unshakable, 1,950 seconds belief that humanity could and should declare total chemical warfare on nature without any fear of blowback. It was the belief that science could create a perfect, sterile world, and that there would be no consequences. While you were cheerfully papering your nursery with insecticide, a quiet biologist and writer named Rachel Carson was starting to notice a problem. She was receiving letters from bird watchers and landowners across the country, all telling the same strange, sad story. The birds were disappearing. The robins were no longer showing up on the lawns. The eagles were becoming ghosts. The springs, once filled with a chorus of birdsong, were becoming unnervingly silent. Carson, a meticulous scientist, began to connect the dots. The areas with the fewest birds were also the areas that had been most heavily sprayed with the new miracle pesticides, especially DDT. She spent years gathering the data, painstakingly tracing the path of the poison from the chemical factories to the fields, from the fields to the worms, from the worms to the robins. She discovered that DDT, accumulating up the food chain, was causing the eggshells of birds to become thin and fragile. The mother birds would sit on their nests, but the eggs would break before the chicks could hatch. It was a subtle, invisible genocide, a chemical sterilization of the wild. In 1962, she published her findings in a book that would change the world, Silent Spring. The book was not a hysterical rant. It was a calm, poetic, and utterly devastating takedown of the chemical industry and the culture of blind faith that supported it. She laid out the science of bioaccumulation in clear, undeniable terms, and argued that these powerful poisons, which we were using with such reckless abandon, were not just killing insects, they were contaminating the entire web of life, including us. The chemical industry, and the scientists on its payroll, reacted with the calm, rational poise of a cornered rattlesnake. They launched a massive, multi-million-dollar PR campaign to destroy Rachel Carson's reputation. It was a textbook case of shooting the messenger. They called her a hysterical woman, a sentimental, unscientific spinster who cared more about birds than about human progress. They called her an alarmist, a fearmonger, and, in the ultimate Cold War insult, they implied that her concern for the environment was somehow anti-American and sympathetic to communism. It was a vicious, personal, and deeply gendered attack designed to discredit her not by refuting her science, but by attacking her character. But it was too late. The book was a sensation. It terrified the public and, for the first time, made people question the cheerful promises of better living through chemistry. Your little nursery, with its adorable poison-laced bunnies, was a perfect domestic microcosm of the very mindset that Rachel Carson was exposing. It was a symptom of the disease, the belief that you could wage a chemical war without any collateral damage. The belief that a poison could be smart enough to kill a fly on the wall but somehow know to leave the baby in the crib completely unharmed. The silent spring was the beginning of the end for that naive dream. It was the birth of the modern environmental movement, a movement born from the dawning, horrifying realization that the miracle chemicals we were using to control nature were, in fact, poisoning ourselves. So, let's review. You have joyfully decorated your home with a fireproof snow that gives you lung cancer. You have gifted your child a patriotic toy that quietly irradiates his entire bedroom. And you have lovingly lined your baby's nursery with a charming wallpaper that passively poisons the global ecosystem. You might be starting to see a pattern here. The asbestos, the radiation, the DDT, they were not isolated mistakes. They were symptoms of the same spectacular cultural sickness. They were all born from the same unholy trinity of 1,950 seconds virtues: technological arrogance, consumer gullibility, and a complete, almost pathological failure to consider long-term consequences. First, the arrogance. The 1,950 seconds had a faith in science that was nothing short of religious. The men in the white lab coats, working for giant, smiling corporations like DuPont and Monsanto, were the new high priests. They had won the war, they had split the atom, and they had ushered in an age of unprecedented prosperity. If they unveiled a new chemical and said it was a miracle, you did not question it. To do so was a form of heresy, a sin against the great church of progress. Asbestos wasn't a dangerous mineral. It was a miracle fiber. The atom wasn't a terrifying force of cosmic destruction. It was our friend. DDT wasn't a persistent neurotoxin. It was a hero chemical. This was the gospel, and it was preached from every television set and every magazine page. The idea that these miracles might have a dark side, a hidden cost, was simply not part of the conversation. Science had all the answers, and all of its answers were good. Next, you have your own role in all of this, your profound, hopeful, and ultimately disastrous gullibility. You were not stupid, you were optimistic. You had survived the Great Depression and a world war. You were a generation that had earned its happy ending, and you desperately wanted to believe in the promise of a perfect, easy, scientific future. You weren't just buying products, you were buying the propaganda. You wanted the push-button paradise, the germ-free home, the flawless Hollywood Christmas. Your own desperate desire for a better, safer, more modern life was the fertile soil in which these dangerous innovations took root. When a salesman in a crisp suit told you that a box of mineral fibers was the safe, fireproof choice for your family, you believed him because you wanted to believe him. You wanted to believe that the world finally made sense, that all problems had a clean, scientific solution you could buy at the department store. And finally, you have the spectacular lack of foresight. The 1,950 seconds was a decade obsessed with the immediate. The future was a shiny, chrome-plated destination you would arrive at in your atomic-powered car. It was not a place where the consequences of your current choices would come home to roost. The idea of a 30-year latency period for cancer was too abstract. The concept of a chemical accumulating in the environment for generations was too slow, too boring. If a product worked now, if the snow didn't catch fire, if the toy was educational, if the wallpaper killed flies, that was all that mattered. The long-term effects were someone else's problem, a problem for a distant, hypothetical future that no one had the time or the imagination to worry about. This combination created a decade-long party, a drunken, joyous celebration of technological power and consumer bliss. And the 1,960 seconds and 70 seconds were the hangover. The asbestos snow, once a symbol of a perfect Christmas, became the subject of terrifying public health warnings. The friendly atom, once a symbol of a utopian future, became the terrifying spectre of nuclear fallout and Cold War annihilation, its image soured by events like the Cuban Missile Crisis and 3 Mile Island. And DDT, the hero chemical that had won the war, was now being exposed by Rachel Carson as a villain, a slow-acting poison that was killing the very planet it was supposed to be protecting. One by one, the miracles of the 1,950 seconds were being unmasked as monsters. The revelations came in a slow, sickening wave, a series of betrayals that marked the beginning of the end for this age of blind faith. The trust was broken. People began to look at the promises of industry and science not with wide-eyed wonder, but with a new, hard-earned cynicism. The cheerful, confident slogan of the chemical giant DuPont Better Living Through Chemistry, which had once seemed like a promise, now started to sound like a threat. The dream of a perfect, push-button, chemically sterilized paradise was dead. In its place was a growing, terrifying understanding of the true cost of progress. You, the hopeful suburban homeowner, had been the test subject in a grand, uncontrolled experiment. And the results were finally coming in. The hangover was here, and it was a painful, lingering, and deeply sobering new reality. The age of innocence was over. The party was over. The bright, cheerful, chemical-fueled optimism of the 1,950 seconds had resulted in a collective, throbbing, cultural hangover. The hangover came with a series of sickening realizations. The snow was poison, the toys were radioactive, and the wallpaper was silently contaminating the planet. You, the hopeful consumer, had been lied to. You had been sold a dream of a perfect scientific future, and you had woken up in a house full of hidden killers. The question now was, what do you do with that betrayal? The answer, as it turned out, was that you get angry, and you get organized. For most of human history, the ruling philosophy of the marketplace was simple: caveat emptor. Let the buyer beware. It was your job, as the consumer, to figure out if the product you were buying was going to kill you. If you bought a patent medicine that was just alcohol and opium, that was on you. If your car was designed in a way that it would impale you in a low-speed collision, that was your problem. The manufacturer's only job was to sell you the thing. Your survival was your own responsibility. But the sheer, spectacular scale of the post-war chemical revolution and the slow, dawning horror of its consequences began to change that. The disillusionment that began with the silent springs and the radioactive toys started to coalesce into a new, powerful force: the consumer rights movement. People were starting to suspect that the giant, friendly corporations that were building their future might not have their best interests at heart. This new skepticism found its champion in a young, stubborn lawyer named Ralph Nader, who, in the mid-1960 seconds, published a book that did to the auto industry what Rachel Carson had done to the chemical industry. The book, Unsafe at Any Speed, was a brutal takedown of the car manufacturer's complete and utter disregard for safety. It was another brick removed from the wall of public trust. This rising tide of public anger and suspicion finally forced the hand of a reluctant government. The creation of the great regulatory agencies was not a proactive gift from benevolent politicians. It was a series of panicked concessions made to a terrified and increasingly loud public. The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, was born in 1970, a direct result of the movement Rachel Carson had started, tasked with cleaning up the chemical mess that the age of better living through chemistry had left behind. In 1972, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, was created, a new watchdog with the power to actually ban and recall dangerous products. The era of caveat emptor was officially ending. The new era, the era of the government-mandated warning label, had begun, and that is the true and most lasting legacy of your story. Look around you today. We live in a world that is plastered, smothered, and festooned with warnings. Your hairdryer has a tag on the cord warning you not to use it in the shower. Your coffee cup warns you that the contents may be hot. Your stepladder has a pictograph of a man falling off it because he stood on the very top step. We laugh at these labels. We see them as proof that the world has gone soft, that we must cater to the most idiotic members of society. But we are wrong. Every one of those warnings is a ghost. Every safety regulation is a tiny, bureaucratic tombstone for a tragedy. We live in a world plastered with warning labels, not because corporations suddenly developed a conscience, but because of the ghosts of countless consumers who happily sprinkled, played with, and breathed in the future, only to discover it was fatal. There is a warning on a can of spray paint because, once upon a time, a product with a chemical propellant was considered a harmless, modern marvel. There are regulations about lead in toys because, once upon a time, it was considered perfectly acceptable to coat a child's plaything in a powerful neurotoxin. And we know that asbestos causes cancer because your generation, the hopeful, trusting generation of the 1950 seconds, cheerfully sprinkled it on your Christmas trees and breathed in the consequences for the next 30 years. Your suffering, your hypothetical cancer from that beautiful Christmas snow, your child's irradiated bedroom, it wasn't in vain. It became a story, an anecdote, a data point in the great, bloody, and decades-long argument for safety. You were the unwitting pioneers, the crash test dummies of the consumer age. Your faith was the price that had to be paid for our cynicism. Your tragedy was the down payment on our survival. The dream of the 1950 seconds, the dream of a perfect, clean, push-button world, was a beautiful lie. Its death was a painful, disillusioning process. But in its place came a new, more mature understanding of the world. An understanding that progress is not always good, that science can be a double-edged sword, and that the promises of corporations should be treated with deep and abiding suspicion. The age of innocence was over, and that, in the end, was a good thing. It was a necessary, if painful, step into adulthood. The miracles are gone, but in their place is a world that is, on the whole, a little wiser, a little more careful, and a whole lot safer. And so, the age of innocent science comes to a close. It leaves us with a quiet, lingering question. What are the miracle products of our own time? What shiny, futuristic conveniences do we embrace today, completely unaware of the hidden costs we might only understand decades from now? With that final, cautionary thought, our journey is over. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this quiet journey into the past, I hope you'll consider joining me again for another story. But for now, let the voices and the cautionary tales fade away. Let the shimmering asbestos snow, the glowing atomic toys, and the cheerful chemical wallpapers all dissolve into the soft darkness of your own room. There are no more hidden dangers to analyze, and nothing to fear. There is only this moment of peace and the gentle promise of sleep. Rest well. Good night.